All right, folks, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Friday, December 14th, 2018. The case out of Alabama where EJ Bradford shot and killed by cops. Now the state attorney general has removed the black district attorney from the case. Wait till I explain to you why. Attorney Ben Crump, the family attorney for EJ Bradford's family, he will join us. Florida Stand Your Ground law helped George Zimmerman get away with the murdering Trayvon Martin. Now the Florida Supreme Court is extending Stand Your Ground to the police? Okay, I can't wait to talk about that with our panel. Also, in Tennessee, the urging continues for the outgoing governor to grant clemency to Cyntoia Brown, who was 16 years old when she was sold into sex slavery and murdered her captor. Also, was the blue wave in the midterm election powered by a black wave. A black political action committee did a poll and they said absolutely. Also, earlier this week, Donald Trump announced a new initiative to help depressed urban and rural areas with these so-called opportunity zones. We'll talk with a pastor out of Baltimore who says this is a good thing. And also, we mourn the great Nancy Wilson, one of the greatest jazz singers of all time. She has died at the age of 81. We'll talk with a jazz historian and her manager and see some vintage footage of Nancy Wilson at work. Folks, it is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
EJ Bradford was the good man with a gun at a mall in Hoover, Alabama over the Thanksgiving weekend. He had a registered weapon, and he was, of course, trying to trying to actually help people get out of the mall after a gunman shot two people. But then police burst in, shot Bradford dead, let the actual shooter get away. The shooter has since been captured. But now the local district attorney, who is black, has been removed from the case by the state attorney general, who was white. The Alabama attorney general, Steve Marshall, this is what he said. And local DA Danny Carr was seen in a picture posted on Facebook with a local activist who is protesting the death of EJ Bradford. Now, on the screen, folks, you will see the photo on the left. That is the photo of the DA with the activist, whose name is Carlos Chaverst Jr. Here's the problem. The photo on the right is the state attorney general with the same activist. Okay, let me rewind that. The photo on the left is the DA with the activist. The state attorney general took the case from him because of the photo. The photo on the right is the same attorney general with the activist. Can you please explain to me what the hell is going on? Joining us right now is attorney Ben Crump. Joining us on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Ben, I'm just trying to understand. You take him off the case because of a photo, and there's a photo of you with the same activist?
Roland, there really isn't any reason at all to remove the first elected African-American district attorney from the case, other than they wanted to get him off the case. It's that simple. And so they were looking for any pretextual reason to do so. And it doesn't hold up when you consider Carlos is also at the victory party or a fundraiser for the attorney general, who is very conservative, who has been looking for a way to get this case removed from Jefferson County, which is one of the only predominantly African-American strongholds in the state of Alabama.
Okay, so Ben, again, okay, so he removes it. Just because of the photo?
That's it. Just because the photo. They tried to also say, Roland, that, well, the police officer had 20 active cases in Birmingham, Alabama, where Danny Carr, the new district attorney, was located. But in every case, you have officers who are going to have active cases pending. So again, that's no reason. We just think it's so unbelievable that they would do this, Roland. And so people are protesting; they're outraged by it. In fact, there's going to be a march on Montgomery led by Carlos and the activists, demanding that the case be given back to the people of Jefferson County, right there in Birmingham, where they elected the DA. This is the reason they went to vote in such massive numbers, to have a district attorney who will be able to give due process of the law and equal justice to people who they know have never gotten due process in the state of Alabama.
All right, Ben Crump, I know you're actually at the airport. We certainly appreciate you joining us, giving us an update on the case. Thanks a lot.
Hey, we'll keep you informed, Roland. March on Montgomery. Maybe we can get you down.
Let me know the date. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
All right, folks. My panel right now is Dr. Ben Chavis, President and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist and President Emerita, Bennett College in North Carolina, and also Ryan Miner, Editor-in-Chief, A Minor Detail. Y'all, okay. To use the photo as the reason for taking the case from him, when there's a photo of the Attorney General with the same guy, that's weak as hell.
It's very weak.
It's past week.
It's race. The reason why they don't want the case for a black DA, because they feel that the DA will give the black community justice. And I think that Ben Crump made an excellent point. That's why people went to the polls, to elect us in the criminal justice system, so it can be more equity, more balance, more inclusion and diversity. And now the state attorney general of Alabama is he's doing what, unfortunately, he's showing the race. He's playing the race card.
Ryan, you got to give me
it's
more
not the
than
photo card. It's the race card.
You got to give me more than a photo.
I'm not always confident of what comes out of Alabama based on their past history. But what I will say that the activist has a photo with the state's attorney general. So I think that they need to apply it across the board standard. And the attorney general's office said that the district attorney who was trying the case had relationships with several of the activists, and that they used a certain they took a look at basically the prosecutor's guide and said that based on these potential conflicts, that's why that they had to remove him. Now, I'd like to understand what all district attorneys have and the conflicts that they have across the board. But if it's just based solely on a photo, then I certainly don't think that that's enough of a standard.
Look, if that was the case, then the attorney general has to remove himself.
Well,
Precisely. Well, again, you had me laughing when you said you didn't trust anything that came out of Alabama. Reverend William Barber, of course, is looking at the South in particular because of the issues that come up in the South so regularly. We know full well that people were denied the right to vote, not only denied all kind of voter suppression. So to get this black attorney general is amazing and tremendous. And this is just the way that people snatch things back. It's wrong, but it's beyond wrong. In the social media age, everybody's taking pictures with everybody.
Okay, right. The number of pictures I've taken with people.
And you don't even know who they are half the time.
Right.
Someone comes up to you and says, "Can I get a selfie with you?" So if taking a picture would...
That's never happened to me.
Oh, well.
but I also want to show this. I also want to show this here. Here we go to my iPad, please. And so let's see if we can go ahead and get this. Just double check the connection, please. Let's see if we can get this. And so this protester, Carlos Chavez, do you see it now? Okay. All right, guys, check the connection, please. So he's been arrested twice now in 48 hours. This is on AL.com. He was taken into custody last night for charged with disorderly conduct, a misdemeanor for using a bullhorn in a subdivision. Authorities believe he and other protesters were en route to protest outside the home of Hoover City Councilman Derek Murphy. Other protesters were told they cannot use bullhorns in a subdivision. And so clearly, folks there also are not happy that they've stopped traffic. They have other forms of protest here. But I'm going to have... This is where, if you're the attorney general, you better give a better damn reason than just a photo.
You know, Roland, the thing that's so egregious about this, even the arrest of this activist, is that we know every black person, and hopefully some well-meaning whites as well, know that the killing of this man was just wrong. It was just wrong, and they're trying to get away with it. And the only thing that black folk have in their arsenal is protests. It's the only thing we have in our arsenal. And so to, first of all, suppress protests, try to disqualify the DA, arrest this guy twice in 48 hours, is really to say we do not want to be accountable. Dude is just dead, and that's just how it is. And that's not how it is. With Ben Crump on the case, you know that it's going to be more than just a slap on the wrist.
I'd like to explore how the state's attorney general said that these relationships could possibly preclude him from being fair and unbiased. Well, let's explore those relationships. Let's talk about that. Let's put that out front and explain how that would, I guess, infect the case and really have an honest discussion. And if I were the Attorney General of Alabama, I would hold the press conference and make the people of Alabama understand why I actively removed this district attorney, who is very well respected in the community.
Oh, so here we go to my iPad. This is a video of Shaverse last night being released from jail. I'm going to go back into it, play it here. So there's him asking his people, all right, time to go, let's go, as they were waiting for him to be released. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have the Birmingham Times is one of our major black newspapers, and they're on the case, and they also have revealed that that the discrimination from the point that the brother was killed in the mall, the attempted cover-up. You remember, they wouldn't even release the name of the police officer who did the shooting for several days, and would not even contact the family of the deceased to let the family of the deceased know what really happened. So I think that the actions of the Alabama Attorney General also need to be investigated. But here's the problem, Roland. We can't go to the United States Attorney General. We can't go to the United States Justice Department and ask them. So we are left to street protests. I think Juliana is right, that we're going to have to. But I think this should not just be a protest by brothers and sisters in Alabama. This needs to be a protest by 50 million African Americans across the United States. We all need to stand up and protest. And I can guarantee you, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we're going to make this a big issue in all of our newspapers around the country.
All right, folks, let's talk about what's happening in Florida, of course. Just when you thought it couldn't be any harder to hold police accountable for shooting black men, the Florida Supreme Court made the state's stand your ground law apply to cops as well as civilians. Now, it's going to be nearly impossible now to hold the police criminally responsible in shootings. Of course, this is where, of course, George Zimmerman used stand your ground law to get away with killing Trayvon Martin. Again, let's go to our panel here. And so, look, we know the current law. I mean, huge protections for police. I'm just trying to figure out, how does the stand your ground law apply to an officer when they already have the badge, the gun, all the...
They have every legal protection. They are less than 1% of them who kill black people, who kill people, are ever held accountable. So this is to say even at less than 1% will not be held accountable.
But there's a Supreme Court precedent that establishes if a law officer is fearful of their life, they can use lethal force. Applying to stand your ground, Ben, I'm just trying.
They're doubling down.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, and I would say, you know, I'm from the South. I'm a North Carolina native, but Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, all these states are doubling down on voter suppression. They're doubling down on arming and giving police officers more ability to act out their prejudice, racial motivated attacks on our community. And I think that, Roland, I don't know if you saw this morning, the CDC issued a report about gun violence. The United States is on a steady incline. We're the most gun violent. There are more murders. There are more deaths attributed to gun violence by police officers and by civilians. And quite frankly, which shocked a lot of people, the highest suicide rate is among white males.
Ryan, again,
so this is a serious problem. So if the Florida is going to...
I really do not care that white men are killing themselves.
No, but the second statistic, the most who have been murdered are black males.
But the thing, but the thing here, Ryan, that still is crazy, that literally with this now, an officer can just say, "Oh yeah, I'm just trying to understand just the logic of applying a law that was for civilians. Now you're applying to law enforcement when they already have significant protections."
Their liberty, our liberty, is in their hands, literally. The police officer, and the facts of the case is, the young man had, it looks like it was like a BB gun, and he turned around, and they claimed that that they shot him. He was turning around. He had I think earbuds in, and the police officer was charged with manslaughter. And this case could potentially not go to trial now because of this state Supreme Court ruling.
Right.
And I think that when you look at the stand your ground law, cops already stand their ground every single day.
Right.
How is this? How would giving an extra protection to law enforcement, and yet? What if that was a reverse case?
Well,
I think what you have here is you have individuals who, again, the problem is when you have a legal system, when you have a system where you are electing district attorneys and you're electing judges, and then if you are a district attorney or a judge, the most important endorsement you want is the police union.
Every time.
And that's what you want in every race.
This is as Ben said earlier, this is a doubling down. This is an attempt to justify murder because you know that they already, as you said, they have every protection that they need. All they want now is just to have a free pass. And so anytime a black person is shot, well, I was just standing my ground. We already get these cases of imagination. You think someone was threatening, somebody was walking up on you. They could be walking up on you for 100 feet away, but that's still seen as threatening. And so, you know, Sean King and some others are doing work around electing attorneys general and district attorneys to ensure that, because they have the discretion to bring a case or not. I mean, they may not bring a case, and so when we have more people of color in these positions, you have people who are likely to be more sensitive about bringing a case.
Ben?
Right. And I'm so pleased that New York just elected a sister.
Yes.
A strong sister as Attorney General, Tish James, and Minnesota elected Keith Ellison,
right,
Attorney General.
But also Aaron Ford in Nevada.
Absolutely. So the thing, though, is go back to Florida. Look who's on the Florida Supreme Court. How did they get there? Most of those people who are currently on the Florida Supreme Court do not represent the interests of the diversity of Florida. Florida is one of the most ethnic diverse states in the United States. But if you look at its judiciary, it is racially exclusive.
Folks, let's talk about Cyntoia Brown. Of course, she was 16 years old when she was convicted in 2006 for killing the man who kept her in sex slavery. She's now serving a sentence of 51 years in prison. Now, of course, we've been talking about this. Lots of pressure being applied to Bill Haslam, the governor of Tennessee, to grant her clemency. Today, the legislature, State Representative Rick Staples of Knoxville, Tennessee, spoke up on her behalf. This is what he had to say.
It's time for individuals that were elected by the citizens of Tennessee to do the right thing. To come together and understand we don't excuse the abusers and punish those who are abused. We do not excuse violence, but when a child has been fed violence, how do you expect for them to react when they're trying to save their lives? We fail as legislators, as leaders in the state of Tennessee by allowing a child to be taken into sex trafficking and to be abused both physically and mentally. But we can correct that now by giving her her freedom. She has gone on to show that she is tough, she is a survivor, and she's in remorse for the action that she's taken. Can we not come together and understand that this goes beyond any political party or political agenda? We just want to do the right thing and correct where we fail, and representing and protecting this child and making sure that no other child, no other woman is caught up in something as violent, as disgraceful as what this young lady suffered. So let's come together. Let's recognize that those of us are elected in the state of Tennessee as high as the governor's office and give this young lady her much well-deserved freedom, the freedom she lost when she was innocent as a young child. Thank you.
All right, folks, let's talk about what's happening in Wisconsin today. Governor Scott Walker signed bills that roll back early voting, cut the power of the incoming Democratic governor and the Democratic Attorney General. Now, Democrats and liberal advocacy groups are expected to sue in the next few days. It's important to note that until the Democrats won the governorship in the Attorney General's office, Republicans in the state legislature did not think those bills were needed. But as soon as Democrats won, they rushed them through this week. Interesting. Very interesting. Now, This is where I say about Governor Scott Walker, no respect for him whatsoever, because it's shameful, it's despicable what he did by signing that. And then for him to say, well, the governor, attorney general, is still going to have some powers. But the thing is, they slashed early voting. It has nothing to do with that. That is payback to the residents in that state, the citizens, because they chose to vote out him as governor and vote out other Republicans.
Scott Walker is a disgrace, and thank God that he dropped out of the presidential contest as soon as he did. And for the Republican Party, remember back in 2012 or 13 when Scott Walker was seen as the logical frontrunner to the White House? This man has always been an absolute disgrace to his office. This is nothing but sour grapes. And quite frankly, it's distressing to see if he would have tamed the White House, what he would have done to voters across the board. This is terrifying.
Well, I'm glad you're on this show. We need more former Republicans like you.
The thing about it, Ryan, is he didn't drop out. He was run out. I mean, it was not like he said, "Oh, gee." He was run out. He was polling terribly.
And he lost fair and square.
Because he basically has no integrity. Because he has attacked public sector unions. Because he has gone after people. You're right. He has no credibility. He is despicable, but beyond despicable, let's just not leave this on Scott Walker. It happened in North Carolina when a Democrat won the gubernatorial race there, and it's happened in other places. Republicans, I don't know what happened to the Republican Party.
They tried it in Michigan.
What you mean? What do you mean? It's called power. I mean, this is very simple. It's power. That's what they want to maintain. Power. They want to maintain control.
Whatever means necessary.
They don't care. They will use their power to do whatever they want as long as they have it.
Right, but the people have at the end of the day, it's the people power. And I think we want to salute those brothers and sisters in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in North Carolina that went to the polls in record numbers. So I think
now they should come out and recall every Republican who voted for.
That's right.
Everyone.
So this is not over with. Freddie Douglass said it best. Freedom is a constant struggle. So, I mean, if you vote on Election Day, you got to keep voting after Election Day to hold these people accountable. And when the next term comes around, between now and 2020, we got a lot of work to do to get that vote out and not let voter suppression keep us down.
Let's talk about that vote, folks. Of course, everyone talks about the blue wave, but really it was also powered by a black wave. Adriana Shropshire is the executive director of Black PAC, a political action committee that has spent millions of dollars to engage black voters and train black community activists and leaders. Mm-hmm. Now, again, they then launched a poll. Cornell Belcher, his company, they actually led it to look at the results of the midterm election to break down exactly what took place and where strengths were and what were the issues. She joins us right now. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to have you on the show. And so what does your poll reveal?
Well, I think it reveals, what we saw and what we knew going into the midterm elections. One is that we just had a significant surge. I mean, I've been saying since last year that this wave that people talked about that was going to come in 2018 actually began in 2017. And it's building and it is not trusting. And so we know that there was a significant number of folks who turned out to the polls, record numbers. In fact, we know that about 40% of black voters who showed up on Election Day in 2018 actually did not participate in 2014. So when we sort of went out and began talking to folks, and many of our partners as well, we knew that there was a significant part of our community that we needed to reach, that we needed to engage, that we needed to make sure that they understood what was at stake with this election and make sure that they showed up. And they did in record numbers. We also know that people are deeply concerned about voter suppression, as you all were just talking about. I think that it is, the reality that a majority of people believe that voter suppression impacted the election. That's across the swing states where we did our poll. In Georgia, it is particularly true, where about 77% of black voters believe that the election was impacted by voter suppression. So real concerns around a whole range of issues, voter suppression being, top among them, but certainly this overall sort of impact of racism and discrimination that Black voters are very clearly saying is a top priority, is a top issue that any candidate who's coming into office needs to be prepared and have the courage to address.
Also, when you look at these various issues, they go beyond just a couple. And so what it's telling is that if you're a candidate, you better be speaking to a variety of interests for Black folks. You can't just come in and say Trump is bad. You can't come in and just talk about voter suppression. You better be talking about economics, education, other issues.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a range of issues. And, when we did focus groups early on, and even some of the polling we did in the spring, what was very clear is that Black voters are, they understand who Trump is. They understand who the Republican Party is right now. They don't need to be convinced of the damage that they are doing to our democracy. What they want to know is, for progressive or Democratic candidates who are seeking office, they want to know what they're going to do. They want to know how they're going to act and how they are going to govern on critical issues. And among them are, the economy, healthcare for sure, Medicaid, Social Security. Those were all really important issues for Black voters. There was also a range of what, I would call social justice or racial justice issues that were also top priorities, equal to the kind of economic justice issues that folks talked about as being important. These racial justice issues were equally important. Certainly, again, voting rights was among them, but also just deep concerns around the rise in hate crimes. I mean, these are not things that are lost on our community. People are both paying attention, but they're also experiencing the increase in racism in their daily lives, and we've seen that in our past research as well.
And so, what is it? So, what do you think with this poll? What should candidates take away from who are preparing for 2020?
Sure. Well, I think you said in part that these issues, the sort of issue agenda, what really needs to be centered in how candidates who are preparing for presidential runs in 2020 or preparing for U.S. Senate runs in 2020 really need to think about how they are moving these issues to the center of the platform that they talk about. These issues certainly, are polled Black voters, but we also polled white voters as well. And one of the things that we know is that the issues that were most important to Black voters were also indicators for whether or not white voters chose Democratic candidates. So the issue of division and racism was an indicator for whether or not, if that was an important issue for a white voter, they chose a Democratic candidate as well. So it isn't just that these are issues that Black voters care about. These are broad issues that I think are cutting across racial demographics. And so those issues really need to be the center of any campaign. I think we also know that Black voters not only came out in record numbers, but they came out early. And so when candidates think about running, they have to get away from this idea that you can wait to talk to Black voters until the last minute. They have to engage Black voters early with this platform, with the set of issues that are meaningful and that will mobilize Black voters. But we know that about 64% of Black women turned out early, voted early, made up their mind that they were going to vote early and did so. So our community is turning out, as we know, using the opportunity of early vote where it exists. But we also know that younger voters are turning out in earlier as well. So they really need to think about how they're engaging us, when they're engaging our community, and what they are talking to our communities about.
All right, then. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much, Ms. Shropshire. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Now, more shenanigans uncovered in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. Tuesday, we learned that the man at the center of the election fraud may have had as many as 800 completed absentee ballots he did not turn in a timely manner. Now, on Wednesday, we learned that the in-person early voting count was improperly shared with certain people who were not election judges before Election Day. This is important because if you were cheating to win, it would help to know where you stood before Election Day. And today we learned that the Republican candidate, Mark Harris, may have specifically requested that his campaign hire the man accused of orchestrating all of these fraudulent activities. Looking more and more like the State Board of Elections will order a new election. Two things to keep in mind. This is not voter fraud. This is election fraud. And no prominent members of the Republican congressional leadership have had anything to say about this. Not a single word, folks. This is just, they love talking about fraud, but But when it involves a Republican, it's amazing how they go quiet.
They're silent. It exposes the hypocrisy, the political hypocrisy. And I think that it also exposes that they were using fraud, talking about voter fraud, when in fact it was the systematic fraud of those in charge of elections. And I think that what North Carolina is exposing, I think it's the tip of the iceberg, Roland. I think that there will be a new election. And I'm hoping that blacks, Latinos, progressive whites will come out in record numbers in Bladen County, in Columbus County, and those in that congressional district where is that issue now. Because I think it's going to have implications for the rest of the state of North Carolina as well as the rest of the country. I think now and the silence, all those people at the RNC that were talking about voter fraud, they're utterly silent now that they've been exposed in their own mirror.
Well, what are they going to say, Ben? I mean, what are they going to say? We cheated? I mean, the fact is that they did cheat. They don't have anything to say. This, as you said, this exposes their hypocrisy. It exposes the systematic ways that this has happened in the past. This isn't the first time that we've been to this rodeo. This is the first time that it's been exposed. And so my only fear, or not really fear, but my concern is that an untimely election, that's not, a special election, people don't tend to come out for special elections at the same numbers. So I'm hoping that voters will be so outraged by this stealing, that they're doubly motivated, if not triply motivated, to come out. Because this flies in the face of everything we know about fairness. But then again, I mean, at this point in time, we see Scott Walker, we see these other things. The way that Republicans have chosen to operate flies in the face of what we mean by democracy. Democracy cannot coexist with predatory capitalism. That's the bottom line.
Speaking as a former Republican turned very happy independent.
All right.
You're exact. The Republican Party doesn't care. Their entire party hinges upon hypocrisy. They ignore it, they blast it, and they just don't care. And Paul Ryan, if he had any gumption, would be down in North Carolina today and saying, this is wrong, what's happened here is wrong.
Oh, you mean the same Paul Ryan who's from Wisconsin, who said nothing about what happened in Wisconsin?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, just making sure.
I'm
just checking, huh?
That would be a Christmas wish come true. But I hope that they have. You're right. I hope that they have a new election, because I think that is what the people should demand. And the Republican Party, you're right,
should be called for. Should be called for.
You'll be more successful wishing for a Maserati and wishing for Paul Ryan to act like he had
Well, the
sense.
preacher who got the Maserati for his wife.
No, Lamborghini.
Lamborghini.
So, that was John Gray, the Lamborghini. But the bottom line is, Paul Ryan ain't going to do it. Barr's not going to do it. Tillis is not going to do it, because they don't have the guts to do it. Because you know what? Because they enjoy winning. And it's about power. All right, folks, here's a word from one of our partners. You want to write this website down, marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org, and I'll tell you why. As we transition to the holiday season, this is the time we start thinking about giving and sharing, and sometimes the best gift that you can give someone is an opportunity that could potentially change their lives. That's why the folks at Transatlantic Real Estate have an opportunity. They've created an investment opportunity for the everyday investor, which it involves legal marijuana and crowdfunding. Now, we all know that legal marijuana has created one of the fastest growing industries in the country, multi-billion-dollar industry. We also know that crowdfunding makes it easy to be an early investor of an opportunity. But it gets even better. Transatlantic Real Estate is different, and they have a business model that is simply to understand. They buy land that supports marijuana grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. Now, what that means is you would be investing in the landlord of a licensed marijuana farm in a high-growth market. You can invest as little as $300 up to $10,000 before the company goes public. Now, here's some more good news. They've extended their offer, which means you still have time if you take action now. Now, keep in mind, you must complete and confirm your application to participate, so be sure to complete the process. Don't spend all of your money over the holidays and end up with empty pockets. Instead, you can get a return on your investment. You can also consider making an investment for someone else. All you got to do is go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org for you to get in the game. All right, folks, President Donald Trump announced this week a new White House council to deal with the issue of opportunity zone. That's promoting economically depressed areas, okay? Now, Trump called the council a very big thing, limited vocabulary, folks, and said it would feature efforts across the entire federal government to deliver jobs, investment, and growth the communities that need it the most. Now, Ben Carson is Secretary of HUD. He's going to be heading up the council. Also speaking at the White House was Dr. Dante Hickman, senior pastor of the Southern Baptist Church in Baltimore, and I earlier talked to him about these opportunity zones. So Dr. Hickman, let's talk about these opportunity zones. First of all, these are not new. Enterprise zones go back to 1993, and so we've seen this really for the past 25 years. What makes this different?
What makes it different for me is that I'm different. I've been a pastor of Southern Baptist Church for 16 years, engaged in community development, trying to bring the necessary investment into the community to restore people as we rebuild properties. And when I heard of this investment coming into the community, it's one of many that we'd like to take advantage of for the benefit of our people.
Now, one of the issues that we have seen is that the people who are most excited are obviously real estate investors or developers. How do you also guard against gentrifying areas, that people will come in and, again, taking advantage of tax breaks, but not actually benefiting the very people who live there?
This is one of the very reasons why I went to the White House this past week, to make sure that when you're talking about urban and distressed communities, that you have a voice from the urban and distressed community who knows what it is to be distressed and in poverty, to be at that table. One of the things that we've done at our church is make sure that we've acquired site control of all of the properties just north of Johns Hopkins, so that what happened at Johns Hopkins with displacement could not happen in the over 100 acres of property that we have now directed and have a city-approved master plan for. So we mitigate against gentrification with a mantra to restore people, with having more diversification in the community, providing opportunities where people can qualify for quality neighborhoods of their rearing. And one of the things that I loved about being in the roundtable discussion this past week was hearing from people like Senator Tim Scott talking about mitigating against gentrification by having existing community leaders and residents on those particular committees that give decision to those communities. So in our neighborhood, with the faith-based institutions as stakeholders, you can't just come in and run roughshod and move people out. You have to do something about meeting the needs of the people who are in.
So in your area, how are you looking to maximize this opportunity zone? And what are you looking to do?
We're the incubator for workforce development, career opportunities and options. We're the incubator for nutrition and wellness, affordable housing, public safety, and education. And so we're dictating and determining how those opportunities get filled. We're looking at how we're doing development. We're breaking ground on 2 projects again this coming spring. And we're making sure that we're on the ground floor of social incubation and innovation, where our people have access to developing retail jobs, where they have access to the capital and equity investment to build those kinds of economic development stratospheres for our people.
Now, again, when you talk about these zones and what they're putting in, are we talking about federal dollars? Are we talking about private investment? Exactly how is your particular area working?
We're talking about both and. So in our area, we utilize new market tax credits, low-income housing tax credits. We utilize public funding, and we want to utilize these equity investors who want to bring in money to particular projects that fulfill artificial gaps that have been created by the devaluation of our property. And
now, how long have you already been at it? Because, again, this was an announcement this week. And, again, there are a lot of people out there who went, oh, my God, this is new. And I'm going, okay, it's not new.
So, yeah, we've been at this master planning and development for the last 12 years at least of my pastorate. When I came in, my successor had already did the first 62-unit senior housing project, and Healthy Neighborhoods did a study. No amount of investment in this community, and the darker the shade of the map, the less likely any amount of investment will work. But the church proved them wrong by investing the first $1 million into a $12 million project where it was leased up on day one, which was a catalyst of development for a workforce development initiative that came in for $22 million. And we've developed the next $16 million senior housing project that was burned down during the riots of Freddie Gray And the real miracle was that we built it a year later where people leased it up on the first day because they want to live in their communities.
So in this space, you said 100 acres, is what you said?
100 acres.
So we're talking about housing, not just for senior citizens, but for anybody. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about also industry. And so it's a multitude of things in that particular area.
Sure. And business development. Any investor can invest in someone's business and parlay that investment for 10 years and for their capital gains, get that investment back after 10 years and a percentage of the profitability. And if they want to keep that money invested in that particular company, they can do so. Our job in the community is to make sure our people are prepared for equity investment, that they have pro formas and business models, and they're ready to go to get that kind of investment. And what really helps them is the ability to get the capital for actual buildings that they need to renovate, because that's a major amount of money for people to put out in terms of a business. What I did like at the White House meeting was that they said investors are excited and corporations are excited, but the community's not excited because the community, of course, is distrusting and doesn't really know what's available.
But here's the other piece. I'll be honest with you. Part of the problem is they didn't tell anybody. I'm being straight up. I seen a text message to the White House. I saw the video and I said, did y'all think to actually tell black media folks that you were having this announcement? Because again, it's one of those things, and it's happened before. They've done things in HUD, and I said you might want to tell folks about that. And look, and I certainly understand how black folks are distrustful of this administration for a variety of reasons. I said, but you can't act as if you make announcements and then think, okay, why didn't anybody cover them, if you don't reach out to the very people who are likely to tell their story.
Yeah, and I think part of it's on us too, because, you know, there's a late announcement. There's an executive order to kind of streamline funds and cut cross agencies and silos. And even in Baltimore, there are opportunity for elected officials to come, and everybody's so distracted by the partisan politics, by the personal prejudices, that we don't even want a seat at the table. For me, when I see rural and urban distressed areas in an executive order, if urban is not represented, then it's going to go to rural. It's going to go to areas where they designate. I think it's up to us to go to the library and get an education.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And that's what our ancestors, they did.
Absolutely.
Education wasn't brought to them. They had to go find a book and read it.
What I've told this White House, though, which is part of the problem, is they've got no black folks on the press side. Unlike the previous White Houses where they actually had folks who specifically dealt with what they call specialty media, they don't have that. And so
they had Van Jones in the room.
No. He's not dealing with special. I'm talking about who works for the White House.
Sure.
The point I'm making is this is one of the mistakes that they keep making, and I've told them this, that you aren't communicating with these black media outlets, black radio as well. I said, so then you go, well, why didn't anybody know? Because you didn't say anything.
I agree, and you make a good point, because they harped on that. The communication's not getting out. We're not marketing this. This is not there. And so they're looking for ways of how to get that out. And when you have Senator Tim Scott and Senator Cory Booker as the sponsors of this particular bill, and then you have Jerron, African-American, who's special assistant to the president, and now you have Ben Carson as the head of the council on this particular executive order, there's no reason in the world why.
So, let me ask you this here. So this is just, okay, so you got Ben Carson, who's already Secretary of HUD, and they got him over the council. Should there be somebody on the business side over this?
Well, it looks like Bob Johnson is involved on the business side. He was at the head of the table, and they're looking to him for leadership and guidance. The mayor of Norfolk was present. There were a number of entities, African Americans, that were represented. Okay. And I think Bob Johnson is the real lead on the business side.
Okay. Well, I would also suggest to them that, look, if it's business, have a commerce secretary. Have
Charles was at the table.
Again, have the SBA, have folks who actually do that, because historically, here's what happens with black folks. You have the housing person No. This is business.
Sure.
This is not housing.
Sure.
This is business.
Yep.
And so that's a different type of conversation, different expertise. And so that's just one of the things that, to me,
Secretary
also is
Childs of Commerce was there at the table. Javita from Treasury was at the table and really talking about making sure the regs are consistent for everybody. And I think this is a yeoman's attempt to make this bill right. I heard Ivanka standing behind me saying, this is the most positive thing and feeling and vibe. And this is what we want. We got to get this done.
Well, I would suggest to that White House, you talk to people who are not in the room to get the word out. If you don't communicate with them, they will never know.
Sure.
So that's the thing there. All right, cool. Pastor, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Good luck.
I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. All right, folks. Yesterday, late last night, the great Nancy Wilson died at the age of 81 in her hometown in California. Of course, she was a Grammy-winning pop jazz platinum artist and top concert performer. She had been battling a long illness. She leaves behind 2 daughters and a son. Here's some vintage footage of Nancy Wilson.
My love has no beginning, my love has no end. No front or back, my love won't bend, I'm in the middle, lost in a spin, loving you, loving you. And you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know how glad I am.
All right, folks, joining us right now is Deborah Levy, Nancy Wilson's manager, and Dr. Stephen Lewis, curator of the National Museum of African American Music in Nashville. Deborah, I want to start with you first.
Okay.
Nancy Wilson, of course, just an amazing artist. How long were you with her?
I was with Wilson for over 30 years. My husband, who was her original manager, started with her in 1959, and he was her one and only manager until his death in 2012, and that's when I took over. But all those prior years, I was her publicist.
And what really stands out the most when you think about Nancy Wilson?
When I think about Nancy, I think about a woman who had such great warmth and class. She was such a giving spirit, not only to her family and to her friends and the people who worked with her, but to her fans. She almost never refused a request for an autograph or a picture backstage. She was just very, very supportive of everybody around her, and I will never forget that. And a classy woman. She had such grace in the way she handled herself.
I think, first of all, you're absolutely right. I met her, of course, when she was performing at the UNCF Gala in Chicago several years ago. And that's exactly, anytime you talk about Nancy Wilson, I mean, that's what you always could think about was grace. You would think about the silver hair. You would think about being elegantly dressed and obviously a smooth voice.
Yes, yes. She dressed well even, when we'd go shopping or something. She didn't ever want to disappoint her fans. So she wouldn't, she wore these great, jogging suits, velour and, stylish clothes, even when just out at the grocery store.
When you talk about her music, look, she wasn't a pop star. She wasn't, sort of in that category. But when you look at the great artists, many of them had great appreciation of her and her singing style, whether they were gospel singers, whether they were pop singers, whether they were R&B singers.
Nancy was her own woman, and she insisted from the first day I started as her publicist on being referred to as a song stylist. She could take any song from any genre and make it her own if it spoke to her. And that was the criteria for song selection. The song had to mean something to her for her to sing it.
Stephen Lewis, again, you're the curator there, the National Museum of African American Music in Nashville. Just your thoughts on Nancy Wilson.
Well, of course, we're very saddened by her passing. Two important things about Nancy Wilson. The first one is, as an interpreter of songs, she was a master of using very subtle manipulations of vocal shading and inflection to convey a really powerful, really powerful emotions to the audience. And you see that in performances of songs like "Guess Who I Saw Today," for example. The second one being that if you look at Nancy Wilson in historical context, she really is, I think, an important bridge between the jazz singers of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, like Nat Cole and Dinah Washington, and the pop and R&B singers of the 1960s and 70s. So really what she was able to do through her work is to translate that elegance of, say, that generation of Black entertainers for a new generation of listeners. So it's really an enormous contribution that she made through her work.
What were some of your favorites?
So my favorite Nancy Wilson album is Nancy Wilson and Cannonball Adderley. As a jazz fan, I think that she really does a wonderful job both working together with Adderley's band and also improvising on the melodies of these songs she's interpreting. And there's just a really beautiful interplay between her and the musicians on that record that I really love.
Deborah, she was sick for the last several years. When did she last perform?
I believe it was 2011. It's been a while.
So she hadn't performed since 2011.
I believe that was her last performance in 11, yeah. But it had slowed down considerably after, I would say, 04.
And that was all due to illness?
It was due to illness. It was also due to her husband's illness and fatigue, basically, and just getting worn out.
Now, you shot some video of Nancy in 2009. You shared it with us. Guys in the control room, go ahead and roll that.
There were 2 or 3 cars parked under the stars, a winding street. Oh, shining down on certain town, and with the same and the same old dream, and every sun, every day, I thought about you. But when I pulled down the shade, I really felt blue. I got into the crack and looked at the track, the one leading back to you.
All right, then let me get the final thoughts from both of you. First off, Stephen Lewis.
Well, as I mentioned before, a really great and distinctive talent has left us. And I think, all of us owe her a debt because of her contributions to American music.
Deborah Levy.
Well, I think that our audience has been saying it best on all these comments they're posting. She gave them inspiration. She gave them solace. She gave them the confidence to go and do and be what they wanted to do and be. And like I said, she was the most giving spirit I think I've ever known. I'll miss her terribly.
Deborah Levy, we sure appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Dr. Stephen Lewis, thanks a lot as well.
Thank you.
All right, going to go to Ben Chavis.
Yeah, speaking of her giving spirit, I hope for the record people know that Nancy Wilson was a very strong supporter of the civil rights movement. She contributed. I remember in 1993, I was the head of the NAACP. She did a whole fundraiser for the NAACP at a time, and the NAACP was facing financial. She really went out of her way. So I just want people to know, yes, she was a great singer. Yes, she was a great entertainer. But she also was a great freedom fighter.
Julianne?
She will be missed. Her voice is indelible. And, I mean, used with so many of us have used it in messaging. Various. I remember cutting some brother to the curb by playing "Face It, Girl, It's Over," as opposed to telling them anything. Just said, listen to that. But guess who I saw today? A classic. So many classics that she offered us, and the civil rights legacy and what she did with the United Negro College Fund as well is very important.
Yeah, just to echo you, she had two booming voices. One was in the civil rights movement, and of course her instrument as being her voice. I got to love her music when I was in high school. I was a saxophonist, and I was in love with Cannonball Adderley's music, and so I've been listening to her for years. And her contribution to music in general, as my granddaddy would say, they don't make him like that anymore.
Not at all.
And so she will be dearly missed.
All right, then again, folks, Nancy Wilson dies at the age of 81. Just got a text message from Jasmine Koenig with regards to some breaking video. And of course, yesterday we had Carl Douglas on the show, and he posted some video here on his law firm page. It is, let me just warn you, it is very graphic video. Jonathan Hart was a black gay homeless man who was shot and killed in a Walgreens earlier this month in Los Angeles. Carl Douglas is the attorney for the family. And so Jasmine Koenig, who's been working with him, literally sent this video. Yes, Henry, go to my iPad. This was shortly after. I told you it's very graphic. You can see the security guard literally standing over his body. And Carl Douglas, again, who was with the attorney, just released this video on their Facebook page. So it's there. It has been made public. And so he, of course, is demanding justice for Jonathan Hart and for the family as well. And so come back to me, guys. And so, again, Carl Douglas he called yesterday, of course, on our show for a boycott of all Walgreens in Los Angeles because they accused Jonathan Hart of shoplifting, but that was not the case. He was not shoplifting. And again, it has caused lots of issues there because he was black, he was gay, he was homeless, and folks are saying, why is Jonathan Hart dead after he was accused of shoplifting when that simply was not the case? Walgreens has apologized for that death, but Carl Douglas says he wants more than an apology for the family. That security firm has been fired by Walgreens, but again, the attorney Carl Douglas says he wants more to happen than just them being fired. All right, folks.
Folks need to flood Walgreens with calls. Folks need to send them emails, etc. Folks need to understand this is unacceptable. And the boycott, if there is a boycott, should not just be in L.A. It's a national chain. It should be something that's national. This stuff has to stop. I mean, it really just has to stop. And so we do have the power of our dollar. Just don't go there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. In the black press, I'm going to have to call Walgreens out all across the country. Juliana's right. Look, and we would like to meet with the attorney because I think that people around the country need to know that these types of injustices have to be dealt with, yes, locally, but also nationally. Yeah. And I think that we have to let police officers, security guards, whoever's got a gun and a badge know you can't just take our lives and get away with it.
Even if he was shoplifting, you don't kill somebody over shoplifting.
Right, and it turns out he wasn't shoplifting. See, the thing is, you can be killed just by walking by while black, breathing while black.
Exactly.
You know, you don't have to be doing anything wrong, which is the case here. So I think that Walgreens, we're coming after you.
All right, folks, let us tell you this here. Of course, December 15th is Saturday, is the last day to sign up for the Affordable Care Act. Now, of course, here's the deal. I don't call it Obamacare. That was a right-wing tested phrase. It's called the Affordable Care Act, okay, ACA. Now, of course, a lot of money was being spent to promote signing up for this when President Obama was in office. Donald Trump has done everything he can to sabotage this, including not spending any marketing. They won't even send out any healthcare officials in the federal government to actually let folks even know this exists. You hear that? Now, here's a piece. You can still sign up, though, and 80% of people can find plans for less than $75 a month. So, again, you can sign up at healthcare.gov, healthcare.gov. I don't know why y'all don't have a, thank you very much. Y'all a little slow. I need y'all to speed up. Again, healthcare.gov. And the deadline is tomorrow. It is tomorrow, Saturday, December 15th. And so please, you want to go ahead and do that. All right, folks. Now, this is our last live show of the year, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Of course, even when we had News 1 Now TV 1, we always took off the last couple of weeks of the year for our staff, also for budgetary reasons. So we're doing the exact same thing here. But it doesn't mean, though, that we were not going to be actually still doing our live programming in terms of our social media. So you'll see us still streaming various events and interviews that we have shot over the past year, and some of our interviews as well. Also, as news happens, it's not an issue for me hopping on. I just won't necessarily be here doing it, but I'll still be able to connect with you. And I'm saying all this is because it's also important for you to understand why we must support our medium. See, I love people who talk about how we need this and we need that. We need our own networks. We need our shows from our own perspective. But the reality is, when you work for MSNBC and CNN and Fox News and these networks, you're actually working for them. They are actually deciding what goes into the news. And so that doesn't happen here. I decide what goes into our show. That's important because our voices matter, which also means we need you to also support. Now, you see me reading live reads, and some of our partners who supported us, AFSCME, AFSCME, we certainly thank them for making it possible for us to even launch our show. They are one of our anchor sponsors as well. But also the folks in our fan club are critically important because every dollar that you actually contribute goes to the show. It's no different than you subscribing to a newspaper and then taking out a subscription. It's really the exact same thing. We don't call it a subscription. We simply call it joining our fan club. But that's really what it boils down to. Because I keep saying this and people look at me and think I'm crazy, but it's true. We have to fund our freedom. We have to fund our own initiatives. Right. Because we can't keep saying we need these things if we then, in turn, don't support these. For those of you who are watching right now on Facebook, those of you who are watching on YouTube, those of you who are watching on Periscope, you can contribute to make this show possible. And when I say every dollar goes into it, it's absolutely the case. The monitors, the lights, the staff, the cameras, the travel, all of that stuff, it all matters. And so every time we do our interviews and when we go across the country, trust me, somebody's paying to hop on planes and to stay in hotels and to bring you these stories. And so we must support us. I want you to go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, to sign up for our Bring the Funk fan club. My goal is to get 1,000 more of our followers to join our fan club by the end of December. Now, we're asking for each person to give a minimum of $50. We've had others who've given, I've seen today, some people have given $75, $100, $500. It's all up to you, some even less. But at the end of the day, what this is about is ensuring that we have platforms that speak to our issues. I got an email today, and so this Sunday, I'll be on ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos. And the last time I was on, I think it was April or May. So think about that. Think about that. Last time I was on ABC This Week, Sunday morning news show, was about 6-7 months ago. Okay? But we're here every single day. Our panelists are here every single day. We're providing information that you're not going to see. Look, Nancy Wilson probably got mentioned on some other networks. They didn't talk to likely her manager or talk to an expert, share their thoughts. That's why we matter. An opportunity for us to be able to tell our own story. So I want you to go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com and join our Bring the Funk fan club. You can pay via Square. You can do it via PayPal. You can do it with the Cash App. All those different ways. We make it easy for you. Now, when you do, you're going to get on this list. We're about to end the show. We're going to show you. These are all the people who have given to us thus far, and we're adding those folks as every time they sign up. And so we're going to do that in a second. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here. Thank you so very much. We've had, of course, a great 3 months. We launched September 4th. We're looking forward to a great 2019 when we come back live with the full show. It's going to be on January 3rd when Congress is back in session. We're going to be covering live the swearing in of the Congressional Black Caucus members as well, so you want to look forward to that. And we're going to keep providing you the news information from our perspective, covering our stories, stuff that gets ignored by everybody else. They don't get ignored right here, and that's why we matter. We want you to make it possible. And so I want to thank all of our interns, PAs, all the folks in the control room, producers, everybody who makes this show possible. Thank you so very much. And folks, you have an absolutely great Christmas. I'll see you again Sunday on ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Check your local listings to see what time it airs in your market. And yes, I am wearing my Houston Rockets shirt because we kicked the hell out of the Lakers last night. So all you Lakers fans, I know y'all got LeBron, but y'all still lost. That's the way it rolls. And the reigning MVP dropped 50 on y'all, including a triple-double. Don't hate. Congratulate. I'm going to let you celebrate. I got to go. Holla!